Grace and peace to you, beloved. Amy Wilson Feltz here. I am the pastor of St. Paul's United Methodist Church in El Paso, Texas. Thank you so much for joining me for coffee with Pastor Amy on this beautiful February morning. I think I told you a few weeks ago that our older kids were sleeping soundly in their own bedrooms after a season of sleeping in the master bedroom because of some fear and some anxiety. And we are so glad to be on the other side of that season, at least for now. Last week, Augie did begin expressing some concern, some anxiety about having nightmares. And so when he does that, I ask him to locate the nightmare in his brain. And so he'll pick a spot and he'll say, okay, here's where the nightmare is. And I will pretend to extract the nightmare and dispose of it in some funny way, some way that makes him laugh. And then I ask him, Augie, what do you want to dream about? What do you want to think about while you are sleeping? And he usually says something like all of us, meaning our family, playing outside together, eating ice cream, dinosaurs. Now, dinosaurs might give me nightmares, but for Augie, dinosaurs are a comforting thought. And so we take those comforting thoughts and we weave them together and we put them back inside his brain in that same spot that he had located before. And then I seal it with a kiss. And then we say our prayers, we sing our nighttime songs, and he goes to sleep. And so far, that's working. Now, we only do that on the nights that he expresses concern. I don't ask him about it, but if he mentions nightmares, that's part of our routine. And I've been thinking lately, is there something like that that we can do in our waking hours, in our conscious thoughts? Can we do something like that when we are full of concern and anxiety? Because we know we have reason to be concerned always, but certainly right now on the global level, of course, we have the pandemic. And for one example, we also know people in our current circumstances who are dealing with very difficult things, with illness, with loss of income, struggling to put food on the table and paying rent. We know that social unrest continues, political unrest continues. So on every level, we have valid reasons to be concerned. And we know that the Bible tells us, do not fear. 365 times we can read that in our Bible. And certainly that's important for us to remember that encouragement to not be afraid, but sometimes that's easier said than done. And we know that we have other verses to encourage us, like the thoughts about not being conformed to the patterns of the world, but being renewed in our minds by the grace of God, or thinking about things that are noble, trustworthy, praiseworthy, pure, lovely. And we can be encouraged by these verses. Another thing comes to my mind, and that's the message from Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. And I know that I mention that often, but for me, this is what it means to follow Jesus, to really work and to allow God to work in us the presence of mind to practice what Jesus preaches in the Sermon on the Mount, which you can find in Matthew chapters 5 through 7. Once again, that's Matthew 5 through 7. And in Matthew 6, we find a section about worry. Verses 25 through 34 are focused on Jesus' encouragement to not worry. I'm not going to read all of those verses right now, but I encourage you to do that this week. I'm going to read the last verse of that section, verse 34 of Matthew chapter 6, where Jesus says, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring worries of its own. Today's trouble is enough for today. Today's trouble is enough for today. We know we're going to have trouble. We know we're going to have difficult things that we have to face, tragic things sometimes. The point here is to encourage us to not be so preoccupied with the things that are going wrong or the things that might go wrong that we miss what's going right and our opportunity to work with God to help more things go right. And that's my point with Augie, Sure, he's going to be concerned sometimes. He's going to be scared to sleep in his room. He needs to acknowledge those things and then think about what will help him rest. I don't want him to be so preoccupied with the thought of having a nightmare that he's not able to sleep and allow his body and his mind and his soul to rest, to get the rest and rejuvenation that he really needs. And the same is true for us. We have valid reasons to be concerned, and we certainly need to pay attention to those things and acknowledge those things. But let's not get so preoccupied with them that we aren't able to recognize the presence of God with us, the work of God in the world, the invitation that we have to join God in that work, to address the things that are going wrong in healthy ways, and to help more things go right. So this isn't a practice of denial. It's acknowledging what's going wrong, but living into the hope and the possibility that more things can go right because of God's faithfulness, God's work in the world, and the invitation that we have to be a real part of that work, of that bringing God's kingdom to earth as it is in heaven. So I hope that you find that encouraging today as you are acknowledging and addressing your very real concern, that you will remember that tomorrow will take care of itself. Today's trouble is enough for today. And while we are in today, let's acknowledge what's going right, what God is calling us to do to participate in that good work. And let us practice gratitude for God's faithfulness. I wish you a wonderful rest of the week. I look forward to being with you again here next week for Coffee with Pastor Amy. You are in my prayers. You are not alone. God is with us. We are with each other. And thanks be to God for that. Amen.